people were walking by and they're like these jerks with megaphones, like screaming at people, right? And it was like, I would see people cross the street. And what really pissed me off is I saw this couple come in and the lady looked like she was about to cry. You know, that particular day, my business partner was away, and then it just sort of happened that we had a whole deer delivered that morning. So I was like, I'm going to debone this in front of you, you jerks. Like, you're pissing me off. I'm going to piss you off, and it's really going to piss you off. And it did. It totally worked. And then I cooked a piece and came back to the window and ate it in front of them. Like, it was comical.
All right, brother. First things first. Is your last name really Hunter?
Yes, sir. Michael Hunter.
It is.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure because you never know. Everybody has like a pseudonym these days. And so I was like, nah, this can't really be Michael Hunter.
Yeah, man. I got, it's funny. I got lucky with branding. And then when I really started to take interest in the outdoors and hunting and foraging and stuff like that, my sister was like, you're like the hunter chef. And I was like, I am trademarking that tomorrow.
And did you?
So, I did.
Well done. I'm surprised it was available, man. I have like ideas that I think about. I'm like, oh, this would be a great idea. And you know, you go on to jump on the website and or trademark it, and everything's taken. Yeah.
It was about 20 years ago, and then I didn't even think. At least I hadn't seen anything from Steve or Nella, and when I first saw Meat Eater, I was like, damn, that's like exactly what I want to be doing. But it was like, it's cool that it's out, like someone's doing it, you know? Because what we're doing, it's definitely not new, you know, but just, at the time I was living in the city. So it's like, it's sort of new for city folks anyway, but.
Yeah. And you're in Toronto. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. So my restaurant's right downtown. But I grew up north of the city on a farm, you know, ever since I was a kid, you know, just a horse farm, not really like a working farm. But you know, we had horses and a donkey and dogs and cats and
Is that so? Did your family hunt? You said hunting, foraging.
Yeah.
Is that something your father got you guys into, or what?
No, it was actually my mom. So my mom's family background is English. So she was like into the hunter jumper world of the sort of the horse circuits. And then she kind of was with a group that were like English fox hunting on the weekends. So they would, and I think for her, it was more of a social thing. You know, they'd get dressed up in their like, it's almost looked like tuxedo kind of coats and hats, and they would have these cool saddlebags with a flask of sherry, and they'd ride around with hounds. And they would actually kill more coyotes. They'd get on the odd fox, but where I live, there's a huge coyote problem. But it was actually the guy that ran and worked the hounds that was from England, who I kind of really became friends with and took me hunting for food for the first time.
Is that right?
I was like, as a teenager. Yeah. So he was sort of like a family friend, sort of pseudo father figure for me, and took me turkey hunting for the first time when I was, I think, 18.
Is that right? So it's a lot more formal, that style of hunting than what I'm accustomed to. That's for sure. And I've gone on some bougie hunts, but some of them are pretty rough. There's a hunt in Hawaii that we go on every year. In the first couple of years, we stayed in a shipping container without air conditioning or anything like that. So we've been on some like nice hunts. I do too. Yeah. I do too. Just to have a mix of all of them is good.
Yeah. Yeah. The backcountry stuff with like.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go. No, I was going to say the backcountry stuff and like tents when you're really roughing it. I think I definitely enjoy the most. It's just, when you don't have cell service is sort of the best, and you can really just unplug. And you're not getting emails and dealing with work. And for me, the restaurant, like always something's broken and there's something the matter, like with a guest or an employee or like. So it's nice for me just to be able to unplug and be in the wilderness. But
one of the hard things, and I don't know if you feel the same way, but with work that's centered around social media like mine is, and you're obviously very active on Instagram and other places, it's a really good excuse to just always be on your phone. And that unplugging and digital detox is huge if you can do it. But it's tough to do because you link being on there to, I have to do this.
Work.
It's for my job.
Yeah. Work. Yeah. Yeah. So no, it's definitely tough, and I'm not, I'm not very good at it. I think, I think especially with kids, you want to be. I've got lots of kids, so it's you want to be a good role model, and there's some rules in our house, and when we're having dinner, there's no phones, and we try and do no phones on Sundays, and my youngest daughter, she's not getting a phone until she's much older. My son's just started high school, so it's a little harder for him, but at nighttime he's got to charge his phone in the hall. Like I don't let him keep it in his room and stuff like that. But
it sounds like we're
it's
very
hard to
similar with
unplug
those
these
boundaries.
days. Yeah.
Yeah. So you went on your first turkey hunt when you were 18, and then
18,
was it something that you just thought, man, I'm in love with this, or
Totally.
you were like,
I was hooked.
okay.
I was hooked,
Really?
like so bad. Yeah, I'd always been interested in food. As a kid, I was just like always starving. Like I'm tall. Like I just grew really early and I was just hungry. Like I was never full as a kid. And, so yeah, and I loved being outdoors. I was raised in the country. We had a pond. I'd go fishing as a kid, catching frogs and bringing tadpoles inside. And I'd seen, I wanted to make some, pocket change as a teenager. I wanted a part-time job and I wound up riding my bike, a few miles down the road to a gas station and I applied to pump gas. And, the guy owned the diner in the gas station parking lot. And he's like, well, I don't need any help in the gas station, but, I need help in the diner. So I wound up, working the breakfast shift at like 7 a.m. on weekends as a 13-year-old kid in the summer. And I'd ride my bike there at like 6:30 in the morning and you'd be washing dishes. And I was like the kid buttering the toast and cutting it. They're putting it on the plate and like, putting salt on the French fries and hash browns. And like, those were my little jobs and washing dishes. And that's sort of my introduction to the food world was this little greasy spoon diner, but it was busy, it was crazy on the weekends. And then from there I was like flipping eggs and I was a short order cook, by the end of the summer. So it was,
isn't it amazing how it works out?
Yeah, man, it was wild, and I think like, if I worked at the gas station, I'd be like an oil executive right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, it's funny. And then, from there, I liked the job. Then I had some buddies that worked at like the local golf club and then I worked there and there was like, more young people and it was really social. And I did the breakfast shift there and those types of businesses were really cool to be a part of my career because, now I'm a chef of like an upscale casual, type restaurant, but I've got experience in working a diner. I have experience in working a golf course with weddings and banquets and all these things. And I've just worked in so many different outlets of the industry. That sort of was like really important for my career, today. And we do events and we do all kinds of, things outside the restaurant where those skills, are useful today.
I think this is a good story and a good lesson because a lot of the men that I talk with who are struggling with a career path, they want it right now. And they just think if I do these 3 steps that I'll, own the restaurant or be a chef or be that oil executive or whatever it is you want. And it's a little bit frustrating for these guys, a lot frustrating because the answer is just another step. You go from that greasy little diner in the parking lot to the golf course, to the this, to the this, to the this. And then, 20 years later, you look at your life and you're where you want to be right now, I imagine. 30 years? Yeah.
It's almost like 30. And you know what? You have to eat a lot of shit and, be the grunt for a long time, especially like, it's like the culinary arts in Canada is a Red Seal trade. So you need like same at the plumber or electrician. It's like a Red Seal sort of, apprenticeship type job, laboring job. And like apprentice electricians and carpenters, like they make way more money to start. And it's a tough, cooking is a tough trade to get into. A lot of guys, they do it for like 5 to 10 years and then they get into sales. They go into food sales with like a giant corporation like Cisco or somebody, or they, I was lucky that if you stick it out for long enough and then eventually, by the grace of God and some luck, you open up your own business. I don't know if I'd still be a chef working for someone else because it's just such grueling labor. You're on your feet. My knees at the end of a 12-hour day are just like shot now.
Oh, I bet.
and it's tough, it's tough on your home life. You're working nights and weekends when all your family and friends are off. So, it's, I've got, kids from my first marriage because I was just to the restaurant, and then, all the issues that come up with never being home. So yeah, it's a tough life for sure. And I'm really lucky now that I own the business, and we have a head chef now that it's in there more than I am. Cause I'm starting to work in the outdoor space, and we work on, marketing, and I do all the caterings and stuff like that outside the restaurant. But, I don't think physically I could be the chef in there every day anymore. Like my body just can't do it after 25 years.
Yeah. Well, and I want to bring something up that you said too. You said, oh, it's just luck and the grace of God. I definitely believe, I believe in both. I believe fully in the grace of God, and I believe a little bit in luck. But also, you probably made some right moves and some wrong moves,
Yeah,
so
for sure. Yeah.
What were some of the right moves that you made as you were maybe launching your own restaurant, or, pivotal moments in your career?
You know what? I think, hard work pays off for sure, but you have to be strategic. You can't, I was hungry, as a kid. I grew up with a single mom. Like financial status when I was growing up was very volatile. Like some years were really great. We're going on all these trips. And then the next year was like, the fridge is empty. Like it was really weird. So I knew that I didn't, I just had this like financial insecurity, I think, and that really drove me to work hard. And then, you have to ask, and you have to earn it. So, if you don't get a raise unless you ask, I think in a lot of different fields, so, but then you have to back that up. If you're asking for a raise, you have to back that up with the work, and, you have to be, you have to be able to hear no. And then if you hear no, it's like, okay, well then what do I need to do to get a raise? And I was I remember lots of those conversations. I'd work somewhere for a year or 6 months, or, if I found I was working someplace and I was working harder than my peers, or I was, more talented than my peers or more dependable than my peers, I would ask for a raise. And, in the kitchen, there's definitely like a hierarchy, from the apprentice, like a brigade system through the kitchen. And I was just really hungry to work all those stations. I really wanted to learn. I think what fascinated me was making things from scratch. So like learning how to make, pasta, learning how to make bread, learning how to make sausages and cured meats. And, it was so weird. We had this harpist that worked on Sundays at this restaurant. He was this hippie soy farmer. And he showed the chef and I how to make tofu. Like it was bizarre, but, I just loved learning stuff like that. And I still do, and for me, what's really fun is, making those cured meats and sausages and, regular kind of everyday meals with wild game. And that's what I love doing. And that's what I like trying to share at Antler Restaurant. And, that was a real inspiration behind, my cookbook.
Yeah. It is interesting. I don't, up until the past couple of years, just out of sense of having to learn how to cook for my kids. I never really enjoyed cooking that much, but the more I do it, the more I really enjoy it. But one thing that I liked, I think probably more than anything I've ever done, is we do a pig hunt each year in Texas. Yeah. Nice. And the company Outdoor Solutions from Field to Table, I know those guys. I've been on a hunt with them. You do? You know Greg?
Yeah. Greg and his son. Is Ed? Edwin?
Ed, Eddie. Yeah.
Eddie,
yeah. Yeah, they're great people. He's a good friend of mine, and so
cool.
But
they do the world.
Yeah, they do the whole. Maybe you've cooked with them. I don't know. Or done a class or something with them.
Chef. I did.
Chef.
It was like a writer's week with the company Made with Meat, and I went. Yes. We hung out, and I was hunting with Eddie all week, and then Chef Albert was teaching the class. I think one of the only guys there that was a chef. I think there was one other guy that was a chef, and the other guys were all like writers. So we just we took part in the class, and then I think I did my own little class with the guys. It was a few years ago now, but
right.
Yeah, it was fun. It was really fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, Chef Albert taught us to made sausages out of the pork, out of the pig that we had shot. And that process, for whatever reason, I love that process. I did see that Made with Meat is a sponsor of yours, and I'm familiar with the company through that. I'm like, oh, I wonder if he's connected at all.
Yeah, really cool, man. No, the reason why I'm so jazzed with that company is their stuff is great. Like, it's restaurant, commercial quality stuff that you can order to your house, and the fact they're direct to consumer, it ends up being a lot cheaper than like if you were to go to a restaurant supply store or whatever that sells that stuff. I think it's a little bit cheaper and it's the same quality. Whereas, like, if you go into Cabela's or one of those outdoor stores, I find they're kind of more cheaply made. I'm really pumped with the quality that those guys are doing. I do some recipes and content for them. But they're really great to work with. And as a chef, like, I totally vouch for the quality of their stuff.
Yeah, I know in the past I've used like vacuum sealers you'd get at an outdoor store. And like you said, it's just cheap. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And that's frustrating. Yeah. Especially when you're out in the field and you're trying to break down an animal and get it secured and safe. Yeah,
for sure. But, man, like stuff like sausages, like, you really have no idea what's going into it. And, like, when you make them yourself, you can actually see how much fat's going in. It's like, oh, that's a lot of fat. Well, I don't have to put that much fat. But then you taste it. You're like, oh, wait, maybe I should add a little more.
I need a little more in there.
Yeah, I need a little more fat. That's okay. But then, all the spices and, like, ways to flavor them. And then you can smoke them. Or what's really fun is like emulsified sausage. So like a bologna type texture. Is really fun to play with. And then you kind of smoke those, and it's more like a ballpark kind of brat kind of style. But yeah, there's all kinds of ways to play around with those recipes, and then, like, dry curing them. There's all kinds of really cool stuff rabbit holes you can go down and learn. And really what inspires me is just, I'm a glutton. Like, I just want to eat and get food.
Hey, find something that speaks to your your soul and go with that, right?
Yeah. And and I think, like, I don't know if it was a book I read or I don't even know whose quote it is, but it's like, you find something you love, and you'll never work a day in your life, and I love food. I love the outdoors, and I've really found this really cool niche of, like, working in the outdoor space, but also I'm still a professional chef and I have a restaurant, and, I get to do all the stuff I love and make a living, while doing it. So,
yeah. Well, and just the process of experimentation, a lot of guys, whether it's hunting or learning how to cook or any skill, are like, oh, I'm not an expert. It's like, well, of course you're not. Yeah. How could you be? But for me, just learning to experiment a little bit, play around with it a little bit. I've had some fails. I've got a bunch of moose meat from a moose hunt my son and I went on years ago. We still have some roasts and things like that. And sometimes, I've made it and I'm like, dang, I just ruined that piece of meat. Yeah. And other times it ends up working out really well, but it's fun just to see what you can do. Yeah,
that's how you learn. The first time I shot a goose, I was so excited. I plucked the thing. It took forever. The down, I plucked a turkey, which is not bad, but like geese have the down, and, like, I swear this bird is probably 30 years old too. So that's a major difference between, like, wild turkey and geese. Is, like, geese could live till they're like 40, for Christ's sakes. So I plucked this bird and I come home and I tried to just roast it in the oven like a turkey. And I made, like, a gigantic, like, rubber lacrosse ball. Like, it was friggin' terrible. Like, it was inedible, like, completely inedible. And I was like 22 years old and I was like, I did something wrong. Like, something is not right. Like, what have I done? And, I still am perfecting the art of cooking geese. But one of the tricks, especially with moose, because I've got this weird relationship with moose where I've never shot one, but I've been on all kinds of trips. A friend of mine gifted me a moose. They were at this camp, and these guys were from Sweden, and they couldn't take the meat home. They could get their mount home, and the outfitter didn't want any more meat, and I ended up getting 150 pounds of moose meat shipped right to my house, which was amazing. And I've just been experimenting with all the roasts and shoulder roasts and things that are usually really tough. And I've been sous videing them, and they've been coming out incredible. So
really,
so I would definitely recommend, and I like, usually what I would do is I'd throw it in a crock pot and kind of braise it, throw it in the
typically
oven,
what I do,
like with carrots, onions, celery, some tomato sauce, some stock or whatever,
put some potatoes in there,
herbs, and just do a big kind of crock pot. And I love that kind of cooking. those one pot meals, and it's like so hearty, and like your whole house smells like wonderful from this stew. And but the cool thing with the sous vide is you can still, so I've taken these like boneless shoulder roasts from the moose, and I just leave them in the bag that the processor vacuum sealed it in. I don't even have any seasonings or anything in there. And I sous vide that for like 4 hours at 130 degrees Fahrenheit. So the cool thing with the sous vide is, the vacuum seal creates pressure, and then being underwater creates pressure, which is actually what sous vide means, under pressure.
Oh, I always wondered if it was, you were boiling it at a low temperature, but it wouldn't boil at 130 degrees.
Not boiling. No. So boiling is 212 Fahrenheit. So it's like, you're basically holding it at like a medium rare, medium temperature for 4 hours. So it can't overcook. But even at that low temperature, all those tough, muscle fibers break down. So, you end up with like a really tender piece of meat. It's like medium by the time. So you take it out of the bag after 4 hours, pat it dry, then I season it. And then I throw it in a hot, cast iron pan with like oil and butter, throw some herbs and garlic in the pan. And then get that kind of crust, like a reverse sear. I don't know if you've seen that stuff.
And that would lock in the tenderness and the flavor. Is that what that, when you sear it like that?
So the tenderness comes from the sous vide, and then searing basically just gives it that outer crust and that caramelized flavor. When people talk about browning the meat, it's really like caramelizing the flavor. Like the meat juices caramelize in the pan, creates that brown crust. And then salt, pepper. You can do like some of those barbecue rubs or whatever at that point and fry it in a pan with some butter. And it's just phenomenal. It's really changed how I eat game at home. Because of the sous vide, and a lot of chefs have been using them for a long time. I wouldn't say like I was against it in the past, but it's almost like I kind of looked at it like cheating, like,
yes,
you don't really like, especially things for like tenderloin and backstrap or like a New York strip loin steak.
You don't need to do that.
You don't need to do that. So, and you can get the same results without doing it. So I kind of thought it was like cheating, but when I kind of figured out for myself, like, oh, I can do it with these tough cuts of like roasts and stuff and still have it be like a medium rare, medium doneness, and it's tender, I was like, this is friggin' awesome. Like, but I find like some chefs, at least in the restaurant world, they're sous videing carrots and vegetables, and it's like, it's too far. And like, I really don't like using plastic if I don't have to. So it was just, that's kind of why I was against it. But when it comes to like tough muscle groups of game animals, it's like a total game changer in the kitchen.
I don't know if this is blasphemous to you or not, but I'm going to go ahead and throw this out here anyways. Like, one thing that I actually really enjoy is just the Instant Pot.
Okay. You know what? I think they're cool. I don't own one, but I have a pressure cooker. So I think they're sort of the same.
Similar concept. Yeah.
Yeah. And can you air fry an Instant Pot, or that's different?
No, that's a separate.
That's different. A separate thing. Okay. Yeah. Instant Pot is the. You know what? I did use one at a lodge. There's an elk hunting lodge, and we used one. It's just a pressure cooker.
That's what it is. Yeah, it's just a pressure cooker. Yeah. So I think they're great. Like on a lot of stuff, great. I would like sear it, like you're saying, and then throw it in there in the pressure cooker. And it's nice because it might only be 30, 40 minutes, if that even, on some of these cuts, and it's done.
Yeah. No, it's you know what? I think if it's going to inspire you to like eat a chunk of neck meat as opposed to giving it to your dogs, I think, man, it's great. Like, and that was the one thing, like, so the guy that took me turkey hunting, he was like this old English guy, and he couldn't cook to save his life. And he was like, I was like, hey, I want you to show him, like, I want to pluck this bird. And he's like, don't pluck the bird. You take the breasts out and get this boneless, skinless breast. So he did that with his bird. I'm like, that's cool if you want to do it with your bird. I'm not going to tell you, but I'm like, I want to learn how to pluck it and gut it. And like, and he was like, oh, don't take the legs. You can't eat the legs. I was like, what do you mean? You just like, they're tough. And he goes, well, they're really tough. And but I didn't know that. As like, I was like a 18-year-old kid that was like starting out in the kitchen. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to put these in a braise and I'm going to stew these. And then, but if you do that with a store-bought farm turkey, it takes like an hour and a half to braise a leg. The wild turkey legs take like 5 to 7 hours to stew. So that's where the Instant Pot, or pressure cooker, really comes in handy. It's like an hour and a half in the pressure cooker, and the turkey legs is like pulled pork. So I think they're great.
one of my favorite hunting stories is my son and I were running an event in Maine, and we had, I don't know, 100 guys there. And it was early in the morning, and they're all out doing PT in the morning. And I came out and I saw a bunch of turkeys treed up at about 50 yards from our place in the field. And I'm like, hey, Brett, go grab the shotgun. And he's like, right now? I'm like, yeah, go grab it right now. So he went and grabbed it. Yeah, exactly. He went and grabbed it, and we walked up there and we snuck up to him. And I'm on one side, he's on the other, and I hear boom. And he comes running out, and the thing's flying off, and he shoots it again, you know, and he grabs it, he kills it, he grabs it. And we're walking back, and these 100 guys are there in the front of the field, and he has it thrown over his shoulder. And he takes it off his shoulder by the legs, and he throws it on the ground. He's like, breakfast is served, gentlemen. But we took the legs and we made them that night, and they were disgusting because I didn't know how tough they were. I can't remember if we grilled them or baked. I can't remember what we did, but it was so gross.
It's so funny, right? And it's like, so that's why, and I totally get, like, so this guy's like, oh yeah, throw the legs in the dish, like give them to the coyotes. And like, so for me as a chef, it's like really cool to teach guys like that, like, okay, these are actually delicious. You just have to do this with it. So that's where it really like inspired a lot of my cooking for the cookbook. And even with friends, like I went to a bear hunting camp a couple of years ago in Slave Lake, Alberta. My friend Corey Jarvis is the outfitter with Three Rivers Adventures. He invited me out there, and it was right before COVID, and we were talking about like maybe doing some kind of a cooking class for like, you know, late onset hunters that like know nothing, right? And it's like, okay, he had all these doe tags that he doesn't even really use, and it's like, let's go shoot some does with like 5 or 6 guys that want to learn, and I'll show everyone how to break them down, and we'll cook them, and it's going to be great. So he invites me to his bear camp, and we're going to talk and sort of figure out this class. And none of the guys at this camp, I think there's 4 or 5 guys, had ever eaten bear meat. And they all had tags. They've all shot bears, like, you know, growing up and stuff, but they're just not accustomed to eating bear. And I think Alberta and Saskatchewan, you're not required to eat bear because they can be full of worms and parasites. And it's like, you have to use the fur. Like you either have to gift the fur to, there's like fur kind of depots you can send your hides to. You just can't toss it in the bush. Like that's the illegal part. Because it's a fur bearing mammal, you have to like give it away or do something with it. But, the coolest part for me was I did bear shanks. So I took a reciprocating saw, cut the shanks off, put them in the crock pot, you know, beef stock. There was a town 20 minutes from camp. So I went out, got some beef stock and canned tomatoes, and I got polenta. I like doing this like cheesy grits kind of dish, but I use polenta. And I made this stew by the fire, and like these guys were like dumbfounded. They couldn't believe they'd been shooting bears. Like some of these guys have been shooting bears their whole life and never eaten it because they're just told, like, it's like their grandfather's like, you can't eat bear, and they're like, okay, you can't eat bear, you know. And it's just like, it's just ingrained into them. And so for me, that's where I get the most satisfaction, like just teaching guys like you can eat stuff, you know, like, and it's, you know, then it's like, oh, well, your deer lasts longer because you're eating 100 pounds of bear meat for the year. So it's like, I as a chef and as like a fellow hunter, I get so much out of sharing knowledge with friends and other hunters.
I mean, and not only is it more efficient, I just think it's more ethical. Like if you're going to kill an animal, I think it's crucial that you learn how to cook it because that's part of the process. But if you can take as much meat as you possibly can off that animal, I mean, that's a significantly more ethical way to approach this. And that's a reason a lot of people, if they're reasonable, I can see some people who, you know, may not want to hunt or they don't eat meat, but they're reasonable about it, right?
Yeah.
And there's those people, if you explain to them, hey, look, we're using all the meat, we totally honor the animal, we're not mistreating animals, we try to go for ethical shots that put an animal down quickly. Reasonable people get that and they can appreciate it. It's the unreasonable ones that are just out of this world. And I know you've had experiences more so than other people with some of these unreasonable type vegans. It's wild to me. What was that, like 5 or 6 years ago that happened where you started to get protested in front of the restaurant?
Yeah, it was pre-COVID. And the funny thing was before Antler, I worked for a big corporate company and they had like 50 restaurants, and I worked in one of their smaller kind of independent restaurants. It was more fine dining. And I started doing game dinners. Well, you really were shooting for my cookbook with my business partner now, but at the time we were just friends, and we got this idea, we'll do some wild game dinners, and we'll attach like a charity to it so we can do it legally and whatever. And we started getting some press around it. And my old boss was like, hey man, if you want to do stuff on your day off, like we can't stop you, but like you can't mention that you work here. I was like, why? And he's like, well, we don't want people protesting the fact that you're shooting animals. And I was like, oh, like, why? Like, that's a thing? Like,
isn't that what people eat? Meat?
Yeah,
like, it's got to be killed.
Like, I couldn't even, so this was like, 12 years ago. And then, we opened our doors, and I think a couple years later, we had one of our staff, I don't even know who did it. No one would really fess up to it. They wrote, venison is the new kale on our chalkboard sign as like a fun little joke. Yeah. And this vegan cyclist rode by, saw the sign, and was like offended. And she was part of this organization where they protest the slaughterhouse like 5 minutes or 10 minutes away from the restaurant. So they already had their little PETA group.
Right. And they were prepared.
They were prepared. And we actually got a call from the clothing company, Canada Goose. They make the big puffy jackets. And they were getting protested by this group because they have, at the time, I think they've actually canceled it, but I think because of the goose down feathers inside the coats and the coyote fur on the hood. And we got a call from their head of security that was like, hey guys, just heads up, this group is planning to protest your restaurant on Thursday. We're like, what? I'm like, why? What are you talking about? Yeah. And they sent us all this info, and they sent us like security company we could hire, which we did, thankfully. Because they're like, yeah, if they come in your restaurant, you're allowed to physically remove them, but like, it's probably better if it's not you. And they kind of coached us through it. But yeah, we had no clue what we were doing or why. And like, we tried to communicate with them, and it was very clear they were not interested in having an intellectual dialogue with us. And it also wasn't clear. It was clear to us that they didn't know anything about us. Like, we had a vegan dish on the menu already. We have vegetarian items on the menu already because it's Toronto. It's like a progressive city. And like, I don't care what you eat. Like, you're welcome in my home. Like, the restaurant is our home. If you're halal, kosher, vegan, I don't care. Like, your money's the same as anyone else's. You know what I mean? Like, there's all kinds of like, I like eating salad. Like, like, come eat a salad. Like, so it was very bizarre. We were just sort of dumbfounded as to why they picked us. And we just kind of let it go on for a couple months. And they would come every week, every Thursday they'd come, or they'd come on a Friday. But they're weird. Like, they would come and they would take pictures like at 10 to 5. Like, we'd open at 5. So they'd take pictures through our windows and put it on their, sad vegan Facebook groups that were like, Antler's empty. There's nobody here. Our protests are working. And it's like, you're posting pictures when we're not even open. Like, and then it just started getting worse because we just ignored them. Like, we didn't give a shit. And I think that pissed them off. So they kept going farther and farther, and they would like take pictures of my kids and put them online. And like, so that's when, after 3 months of them coming every week, I cut up an entire, deer leg in the window and told them to F off. And they put it on their channels, and it went completely viral. Every news outlet in the States was writing about it. It was on a bunch of the news stuff on TV. And it was global news. We were getting news sent to us from friends like in Europe, in South Africa, New Zealand, Australia. A friend of mine cooks in Singapore sent me an article. Like, I just couldn't believe it. It was
really
like,
well,
you hear about things going viral, like, the Hawk Tuah girl, like, but like, thankfully mine wasn't quite as embarrassing, but like, when it happens to you, it's like, it's fucking sucks.
Was it, I mean, imagine tough, there was a ding to the business initially, but also I have to wonder if it just helped your business explode.
And so initially it was hurting because we're like small. We're a like mom and pop kind of place. We're
Yeah, if I'm going to
45
go out to
seats.
dinner, I'm not going to go to a
Yeah.
place where I'm going to be harassed. Like,
Yeah. Well, that's what was happening. So people were walking by and they're like these jerks with megaphones, like screaming at people. Right. And it was like, I would see people cross the street. And what really pissed me off is I saw this couple come in and the lady looked like she was about to cry, like, because they had these signs of like animals being tortured in other countries. And they're like, this is what you're eating, you know? So yeah, that's, you know, really what triggered me, to kind of fight back was like, we got to do something. Like they're hurting our business. They're like stressing out my staff. They're stressing me out. You know, and I knew like I would leave when they were coming because I knew I was going to do something stupid. And then, you know, that particular day, my business partner was away or he had to do some, he had a meeting or something. So I had to stay. And then it just sort of happened that we had a whole deer delivered that morning. So I was like, I'm going to debone this in front of you, you jerks. Like, yeah, you're pissing me off. I'm going to piss you off and it's really going to piss you off. And, it did. It totally worked. And then I cooked a piece and came back to the window and ate it in front of them. Like it was comical.
So how did it all die? Like, did it just dwindle out and they lost interest or how did it come to a head or an end?
From there it grew. Like, so it was like 10 or 20 people would show up and protest the restaurant. Then it was like 100. But then it started like, we started like when it went viral, our business doubled overnight. Like we couldn't fit any more people in the restaurant. And like we made some like best new restaurant lists. We got a couple awards when we first opened. We were on all the breakfast television shows, like Cooking with, you know, the morning show and whatever. So we were popular already. It's like we didn't really need the business, but like all of a sudden we started doing like Saturday numbers on a Tuesday. Like, you know, Tuesday through Thursday was kind of slow. And then Friday, Saturday, Sunday was always busy. And we closed Monday. But then like Tuesday, every night was like a busy Saturday all of a sudden. So, and people were coming wearing fur coats to fight with them. And like, you know, there was like comedy people coming. There was like far right news. Yeah. There was like far right news organizations coming to like mess with them and stuff. Like it was just bizarre. And they protested us once a week for 11 months. And it was like, man, it was like dinner and a show. It was just bizarre. And it was a weird time. You know, Joe Rogan reached out and had me on the podcast. That was wild. Yeah, it was just, it was a really weird time. And, you know, I think it, you know, definitely the cool part was it put the restaurant on the map, like on an international level.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, we were popular already. We had a good thing going. And then now we get people from all over the world that are in Toronto on business that come to the restaurant because of that. You know, they heard us on Rogan or in the news and they want to check us out. So, yeah, it was, like, you know, definitely a blessing, a silver lining. And
right. Thanks for the press. Appreciate it. You did exactly opposite of what you were trying to do.
Yeah. You know, but it could have gone the other way. Like if we had, I had a friend with a PR company and I spoke to her and she was like, all right, do not go outside. Like whatever you do not go outside and talk to them. She was like, you're going to write one statement and we're going to pick the news, you know, article, like news company that we're going to give it to. And you're going to give one interview with one educated, you know, person that we like. And then you're not going to talk to anybody else. So what happened was that news article, everyone just started quoting that same piece. So what happens is, you know, and because what happens when you try and tell the same story over and over again, little things change. You know, you might start saying your views on one thing. You could get political. You could say something inappropriate, like, and then it's like a game of broken telephone almost. But like we did our one statement and then it was like we had one story and we just kind of stuck to it and it worked. You know, and then they kept interviewing this lady and she just kept sounding crazier and crazier and crazier. And,
of course,
you know, and they were crazy. And, they wanted us to stick a sign in our window that was like, you know, basically that we're evil and we hurt animals and, you know, we're going to switch our menu to being vegan. And it was like, who in their right mind would do this? Like, you know, if you want to open a restaurant and serve vegan food, like, I think that's great. Go ahead. But like, you're not going to tell me what to serve in my restaurant. Like, it's bizarre. So yeah, it was
that's
very,
the
very
strange thing to me is that, you know, for anybody who eats meat, I would assume that nobody really cares that another person is a vegan. Now, I might mock it a little bit and poke at it a little bit because I think it's funny and gross, but I'm not I'm not going to like attack a person or go after their, like, I really don't care all that much. It's funny that it only comes from one side. Yeah, exactly.
It's very strange. And I find it like, not that I want to get into politics by any means, but it's like, some political parties accept the other political parties for who they are and just let them be. And then other ones want to change everybody. And it's like, well, it's not how life works. It's like, I really miss, and I think, part of the issues in the world today was social media and just like every news article, like news station is trying to get clicks with like clickbait. And they're like, the only way that they can get their views and get their funding is through clickbait. And it's really like just turning people against each other where like, governments and people are supposed to work together and like, having different views in a government used to be a good thing where they would, try and work out their differences and come to some kind of a middle ground. It doesn't happen anymore. It's just sort of us versus them, and people trying to change the other people's opinion as opposed to, uniting people and coming together.
Well, and even on the, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, like, I don't think it's sustainable for the entire world to be vegan, and it's maybe not sustainable for the entire world to hunt and eat, to do what we do. I don't think there's enough game animals on the planet if everyone was to take up hunting and do what I do. But, maybe someone wants to have a little farm with chickens. Maybe they do want to be vegan and have a little self-sustaining farm and just eat vegetables. I think that's great. Good for them. But I'm not trying to change the way that anyone is.
The most interesting thing to me about it is somebody who's truly a vegan, and maybe they're doing it out of principle, maybe they're doing it for health reasons or whatever, but they do not eat meat or animal products at all. I actually have some respect for that. They're taking a principled approach. I don't agree with it, but at least they're being principled in application of what they believe. But the issue that I have is somebody who eats meat, but then like I'll post a picture of me hunting a deer and they're like, I can't, you're a horrible human. You killed that deer. I'm like, dude, you're eating a hamburger right now. I saw a dish farm. I saw a dish on your Instagram thing of the chicken breast that you had last night. What's the difference? Never seen
sunlight.
Well, that's the difference, right?
That's bizarre. It's bizarre. And I've got some family friends that have property and they won't let me hunt because they don't like hunting. And it's like, well, you eat meat. Like, what do you mean? And they're like, well, we like the deer. It's like, okay, that's fair enough. But
I get that. It's like, we like the deer coming in. We like to have them. I understand that actually.
You know what? And the best part is my mom has some family friends with lots of property. And I asked her friend if I could hunt. And she turned me down respectfully. And it was like, okay, fair enough. Super cool. She called me 2 years later. She goes, they ate all my landscaping. I put all this money into these flowers and things. And she was like, kill this deer.
Yeah, totally.
It was funny. Or like
that is funny.
When where my friend's mom lives, his neighbor lets us hunt turkeys, but not the deer because he doesn't like the turkeys, but likes the deer. But yeah, it's people that think the food comes from a styrofoam package in the grocery store and then throw shade at us for hunting is something I'll never understand. But
yeah, it's strange. It is what it is, and it's what a hunter, I guess, has to contend with. But also, we post all of our stuff on social media, so we call that attention out. And there's a lot of people who do it respectfully. There's Joe Rogan's a great example, Cam Haines, John Dudley. These guys do it in a very respectful, educated, ethical way, I think. But then I've seen other things where they'll take a picture of their deer and blood's all over the deer and the deer's tongue's hanging out. I'm like, guys, come on. Like, optics are important, especially
especially today. Yeah.
Yes. In an activity that is that agitates a lot of people.
Yeah. And I think that is exactly why me as a chef sort of found a niche into the hunting world. And I've been able to work with a couple of really cool brands as I write recipes for a shotgun company, and I can talk about food first. This is why I hunt. Post a picture of food as opposed to
a dead animal,
just
right?
Dead animal, right?
The grip and grin.
I think the grip and grin, and for people that don't hunt, it's a more of an icebreaker, and it's been really cool for me to explore. Like during COVID when my restaurant was shut down, if it wasn't for working with some of these outdoor companies, I would have lost my house. Toronto, Canada was really bad for the lockdowns and stuff like that. So I'm definitely really grateful for the partners I have in the outdoor space.
So at the restaurant, are you? Is there any sort of restriction on game that you can prepare?
Oh, totally. Yeah. It's exactly like the States. Like, so we work with local game farms, and then everything's got to go to a slaughterhouse. I know in Texas they're doing a program where if they trap the hogs, they can get them onto a trailer and then they're actually processed at a facility. So friends of mine with Mossy Oak, they're doing a Mossy Oak butchery. I think it's called Gamekeeper Butchery. You can go online and actually order this wild boar meat that's coming from Texas. It's actually wild, and you can order that to your door, which I think is super cool.
That's cool.
Because, the sale of game in Canada and the US for the most part is illegal. Besides that, I know like Maui venison, they've got a similar sort of sort of idea where you can, it's wild venison that's been processed and they're selling it. And I think things like that are cool because it's an invasive problem. It's like, I don't want to advocate for wiping out all the elk so I can sell it at my restaurant, but like, if there's a problem with wild pigs, like, let's do something about it. And let's, instead of just exterminate them and leave them rotting in the field, let's feed people, So,
right. Yeah. Same thing with the axis deer in Hawaii. And it's funny. One of the guys I hunt with, there's no predators. So there's no cycle of life, appropriate cycle of life there. Right. Yeah. Well, but one of the guys I hunt with gets upset because with Maui venison or whatever it's called, he's like, that was my idea. I had that idea first. Yeah. So I hear him get upset every once in a while. It's funny.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny, man. Yeah. You know what? Newfoundland's a special place in Canada. So they're the East Coast island. Well, I guess they're not. So it's Newfoundland and Labrador. Labrador is on the mainland and Newfoundland is the island, but it's one province. They actually can sell wild game in their restaurants. You can sell it to your neighbor. And I think a lot of it, I don't know if it was from tourism or they never changed the laws. So I know moose are not native to the island and they're actually hurting the natural caribou population. So like something like moose, you can shoot a moose and as long as you have the tag, if you get the tag, you can do whatever you want with that moose. Same with partridge, same with whatever. And I think the only stipulations they have is on their menus. They have to notify people like this is wild game, like eat at your own risk. But it's sort of an example where, they're not killing extra animals just to sell it. But if you shoot a moose and you've got the tag already, you can kind of do what you want with it, which is it's interesting. And it's an interesting model. I think a lot of people would disagree with me if I said I wanted to do that in Ontario at my restaurant. Because I think like the wild boar, I think there's some invasive species like, Canada geese, snow geese, things that are, technically overabundant species. I think there'd be some really neat opportunities because for me as a chef, why can I buy wild salmon and sell it, but not wild meat? And for people that don't hunt, people that don't hunt and fish, they have access to wild fish, but there's really no access to wild meat. And I think everyone has the right to eat wild meat, but if you don't hunt, there's really no way to acquire it. So it's interesting to look at. I know it would be very controversial.
Why do you think it'd be controversial?
Well, because, things like moose in Ontario, the moose populations aren't great. In some places, the deer populations aren't great. So I think there's some animals that, shouldn't be on that list of things to hunt. And like, I know that upland game birds, numbers aren't, some aren't doing well in some areas and stuff like that. So
there would probably be, if you had like a tag system, that's fine. But there, like in thinking about this, there would probably be a significantly higher instance of poaching if you monetized every animal too.
Totally. And I think, yeah, exactly. Like I think there would still be poaching, and I even know now there's still issues with poaching, but I think with the overabundant species and the invasive species, they do it in other countries. Like even in Europe, the UK, for example, they've got a huge problem with fallow deer. A friend of mine, you might know him, Chef Mike Robinson from the UK. He's got a program called Deer Box where he manages a bunch of property in estates, and he culls like 2,000 deer a year or something. Like they have,
Wow.
it's, I don't know if it's invasive, but it's a game animal. I think it was brought to England. And they've got no natural predators, and they're like, wiping out farmers' crops and stuff, and they've got a problem. So he's got like a bunch of restaurants. They sell all the deer in the restaurants, but as a citizen, you can sign up for his deer box program and get fresh meat delivered to your door. Like, I think
That's cool.
it's a really cool
Yeah.
program, and maybe it wouldn't work here, but I think, even in some coastal regions like lionfish, I don't know exact numbers, but they're overpopulated and invasive and pushing out, native reef fish, things like that would be interesting to look at. Like, let's cull these invasive species and sell them or eat them.
Well, and I don't really see a difference between doing something like that and the same process that we use for cattle. I mean,
Yeah.
they're all brought into a slaughterhouse. They're raised
Yeah.
to eat and consume. And, you could do the same thing with deer, for example. The problem is they're a little bit higher on the cuteness scale.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where people
Teddy
draw
bear.
the line, right? Yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah.
like a cat.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll
yeah.
eat a cow and we can
Yeah,
factory
yeah.
farm these cows, but we're not going to do
Yeah.
that with deer because they're
Yeah.
too cute.
You know what? But also farming deer, and I've learned too, in like farming bison, it's a lot harder, and the yields aren't. Profit margins are smaller, but the yield of meat is a lot less than a cow. Even bison, like the age for maturity to slaughter bison is 2 years, whereas cattle is like 9 to 12 months.
Right.
So it's just
Yeah.
it's a money thing, right? But it's definitely interesting, and especially with the wild boar thing, like. We should be doing everything we can to get rid of those and eat them, as far as I'm concerned.
Totally. They are a nuisance. They're a real problem,
Dude,
actually.
like, like we don't quite have it here where I live. Some of the Western provinces are having some issues. But I've seen the destruction in Mississippi and Texas, and it's wild. Like, they'll plant a field and the next day it's all torn up and they've eaten all the corn seeds that have gone in the ground. Like, it's bizarre.
Yeah. I'm surprised we don't have them in Utah to the degree. I mean, there's maybe a few, but it's not really a problem yet. And I'm kind of like, oh, we don't want that problem. And the hunter side of me says, well, we kind of do want that problem, actually.
Yeah. So here, I don't know Ontario laws specifically, but I know in some of the Western provinces, it's actually illegal to lease your land for hunting. Where in the States, like, people lease land all the time. Like, that's a majority of the way that everyone that hunts that I know has a lease somewhere.
Right.
But where I live, it's basically, if you're hunting private property, you just need permission. So, geese do a lot of damage to farmers' fields. So I get to geese hunt, and, I do a lot of work with some farmers. I help them apply, in the off season. When they're planting their crops, the geese will come and hit all the like little shoots that are growing. And wipe out their crops, and you can actually apply for the permits to kill permits for those geese. So I've actually helped a bunch of farmers. Like, this is, here's the form, you got to fill it out, and I'll come shoot them for you. And then in return, they'll let me hunt in the fall, and I can shoot turkey or deer or whatever. But
Nice.
it's sort of a neat relationship that we have with the farmers here.
I think that's one of the coolest things about the hunting community in general is, and you're going to find outliers to this, but everybody works together. Everybody's trying to do the right thing. Every once in a while I get a post of people saying I'm trophy hunting or whatever because they don't understand. But I don't personally know any poachers. Like, everybody that I know who's a hunter or that I hunt with is an ethical, moral person. They go out there, they want to do it right. They want to get as much food as they can. They're really giving with their food. They give it to family and friends. Like, it's just not what a lot of people think it is, but it's a very cool community of people.
Yeah. And the funny thing too is, like, people think you shoot a deer, you cut the head off, and you leave it in the field and bring it home. It's like, that's like so illegal. Like,
Exactly. There's
even if
laws
I
against
wanted
that.
to do that, like, even if I wanted to do that, like, do you know the amount of trouble you get in? It's like, they can take your car, your trailer, your side by side, like, whatever you use,
Your
to poach
hunting
that
license,
animal, like,
firearms.
like, you are like, the fines, like, it is like so not even worth it. Like, but people don't, they're like, oh, we didn't even know that's a thing. Like, you have to eat it. It's like, yeah, it's against the law not to. Like, it's funny, man.
Yeah. Well, so where did the cookbook come into play? I mean, obviously, you know, you hunt, you've got the restaurant, and then you decided to put together this cookbook out of being asked, or just a project you wanted to do, or what did that look
No, it
like?
was, yeah, it was just sort of, I think it was in my 20s. I sort of got the idea that I wanted to do it. You know, the more I started hunting and picking mushrooms and foraging and stuff, more of my family and friends were, I could see like people were really interested in what I was doing. And they wanted me to like take them or teach them or, like just educate. And I just thought I should, you know, this would be cool to write a book. And, again, it was like what I was doing wasn't new. But like, it's sort of like a lot of stuff and traditions have been lost, you know, I think. So I really just wanted to help educate people and like, you know, this is the food that's all around us. And then I wound up working for a famous chef, from the States that opened a restaurant in Canada. And he gave me his cookbook and I kind of looked at the guy and was like, you know, he's just a regular guy like me. And, you know, he wrote a book. I'm going to write a book, you know, and that's sort of where the idea came from. um, and then, yeah, I wanted to be about wild food and fishing and foraging and really just sharing knowledge. But yeah, I bought a camera and I thought I'm just going to take pictures on my adventures. And it was just sort of like this dream I was working on and didn't really have an end goal. I didn't have a publisher. I knew someone that self-published a book. I thought, oh, maybe I'll try self-publishing. And then, I just wound up meeting other chefs that had books. And then I asked if they, you know, they could put me in touch with their publisher. Which was interesting because in the beginning they were like, yeah, you can do wild game, but like there's no pictures of dead animals or like, and there was no squirrel. Like I was sort of fascinated by
No squirrel.
how squirrel, yeah, tasted like chicken. I was
No,
like, this
no
is like such
possum
like
or
yeah,
raccoon.
it was like such, I still think squirrel is like a really underrated game meat.
I've never had squirrel before. I would,
Oh,
but
dude,
I've
you
never had
gotta
it
shoot a
before.
squirrel. There, it's. I'm like, I was like, I don't know, 28 years old when I first ate squirrel, and I got a 22, and I shot all these squirrels. I was like, I don't even know what to do with these, and I YouTubed how to skin a squirrel, and it was like this 12-year-old kid from Louisiana, like video with this
Sounds
accent.
about
And it
right.
was like,
Yeah.
I laughed so hard, and then dude, it's like you skin them like pulling off a tube sock, like they just pop off and they taste like rabbit, which tastes like they're in the rabbit family. They can't get rabies. There's all these like, they're pretty healthy, like little critters. And they taste like chicken at the end of the day. They're delicious. So yeah, really cool, neat little animal, super bony. Like, you know, the back legs are kind of where it's at. And then, you know, like, you can kind of take the bone out and pound it with a meat mallet and like do the buttermilk kind of fried squirrel. Really good.
Really?
Really
Is that
good.
in the cookbook?
Yep. I
Oh no,
believe it
you said you
is.
couldn't. You
Yeah.
did. Okay.
No,
Yeah.
so that was the funny story. Like when I'd been working on the book for so long that, you know, I think Meat Eater launched a couple books before mine came out and we actually have the same publisher. So ended up sneaking 2 or 3 squirrel recipes in the book.
Well
So,
done. Well done.
yeah, and then you know they sort of lightened it. There was definitely a few photos of dead animals and stuff. So they took it easy on me when I delivered everything. But
That's awesome. And then you have a new book next year too, right?
yep. So that I don't even have the official title yet. That's still with the publisher, but all my work is done. It's with the publisher for design and printing and stuff. But it's going to be fall 2025. The first book did really, really well. I was very fortunate. Steve Ranella had me on his podcast, and we actually launched the pre-sale on his podcast, which was huge for me as a first-time author. Yeah, really, really nice guy. You know, for doing that.
He's a great
we have
guy.
the same great guy, and we actually have the same publisher. So the publisher is really happy that when authors do stuff like that,
Help each other out that
yeah,
way. Yeah.
help each other out. Yeah, and it was just, you know, and I didn't even really plan it. Like they invited me on the podcast. We were talking about the vegan stuff. It was COVID. So it's like, I was just happy to get out of Canada. And then I was like, hey, you know, my book's coming out. And they're like, well, let's tell people about the pre-sale. I was like, sweet. Like it just sort of just happened sort of organically. But yeah, so as a Canadian first time author, selling a book in the States was a huge, huge deal for me. So yeah, it worked out
well,
really
we'd
well.
be happy to have you back on next year when the book comes out. I mean, I love these conversations, and hopefully at some point we can maybe get together, maybe hunt together or cook or prepare. I'm sure we're running around in similar circles, so I'm sure we'll bump into each other at some point.
100%. Do you do any of the SCI shows, or you sure you go to the Western Hunt Expo? Or
I do go to the Western Expo. That's one me and my boys go to every year. We have for about 6 years now. I love it.
Cool.
I love it.
Yeah.
You go to the Western Expo?
I haven't. No, I want to go. I've seen all the photos and it looks really cool. So let me know when it is, and hopefully maybe next year I can come. I have some friends in Utah.
I think it's February. I think is when. But I'll find out. I'll let you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome.
Well, tell the guys where to connect with you, pick up a copy of the book, learn a little bit more about your work, and maybe even visit your restaurant.
Yeah. So if you're ever coming through Toronto on a layover, book an extra night and come to Antler Kitchen and Bar. On the socials, it's Antler Kitchen and Bar on Instagram and Twitter. My personal stuff is all at The Hunter Chef, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, any YouTube. I've just actually started focusing on some more long format YouTube cooking videos for fun. So if there's anything you want to see, let me know. Let me know in the comments, and I'll try and make a video. And yeah, the Hunter Chef Cookbook is on Amazon. Chapters, Indigo, Barnes and Noble, wherever you buy books, it's there. Signed copies are at my website at thehunterchef.com. Yeah, that's it, man.
Awesome, brother. Well, this has been a good conversation. I appreciate you and your work. I've followed you. I think I initially found you through Joe Rogan, actually. And to be able to have a conversation now, man, I'm excited about it. And hopefully we'll get to know each other a little bit better. So thanks for joining me today, man.
Yes, sir. And I hope to share the field with you sometime. That'd be fun.